Dr. Rakesh Gupta has already joined and from New Delhi, who is going to discuss the important judgments on the income tax. I would request now RCMCA Vikas Jain to introduce the esteemed faculty.
Thank you, Sunil sir. It has been a power-packed Sunday, I would say, and very well-organized program, and wherein the who's who of the country in the field of international taxation have already spoken. Pramod Kumar sir, we have been had a great privilege of hearing him earlier also when he was in Ahmedabad, and he's a great, I would say, inspiration to all of us, always ready to help the members. And I always remember when he used to say, when I was the chairman, me, Harit Bhai was heading direct tax committee that time. So we used to go to ITAT and Pramod sir used to say कि भाई आप लोग young generations को तैयार करिए ITAT में आने के लिए और जो भी support होगा I'll always be there with you. और Rashmin Sanghvi sir is such a gem of the person, उनको सुना. Then TP Oswal sir, it has been a great Sunday, I would say. And then now coming to our today's next learned speaker, Rakesh Gupta ji. I still remember in my chairmanship when Harit Bhai was planning for DTRC and we had the privilege of having Rakesh Gupta sir with us, and the personal interaction and all this which we had with him. He's such a great person, I would say, and always enjoyed listening to him. So on personal front, I can tell that yes, in that program thereafter also we had on many occasions we had him in Ahmedabad, but unfortunately for the past few years because of the pandemic and all this, we have not been able to hear him in person. And today also again, because to hear Rakesh Gupta sir in person is a different, this altogether different experience, I would say. जो दिल्ली का लहजा है वो भी बहुत मजा आता है उसका भी. So it's always yes. And sir is so upfront and so blunt on the points when he speak, and that actually adds this. If I discuss, if I give the introduction simply by reading the profile, उसके अलावा जो experience हम लोगों ने हरित भाई और हम लोगों ने किया है सर के साथ, वो जो बताएंगे वो I think that is more even meaningful and would. So we have experienced that and no words to express that, I would say, sir. So sir had been instrumental in many of the landmark judgments. He has been he is having a number of degrees with him, I would say. FCA, FCS, AICWA, MBA, LLB. He was the first rank holder in his LLB examinations in his entire university. Then he has done LLM, he has done PhD. He was appointed as the member of ITAT tribunal at the age of, I would say, just 37 years, when many used to struggle to settle in the practice itself. And he was posted at the Hyderabad, but thereafter he resigned. He has co-authored his book with his partner, Mr. Raj Agrawal, and these two books were published by the leading publisher Taxman. Then he has Search, Seizure and Assessment of Search Cases, and the another book is Taxation of Real Estate Development and Joint Development Arrangement, which itself is such a complex topic, I would say. He is practicing as an advocate and appeared in various ITATs, High Courts, and Supreme Court of India. He has argued high-profile cases of the country, which during our personal discussions, undoubtedly, we had got the privilege to listen about 3 of those cases. And he has participated in UN Committee of Experts on International Cooperation in Tax Matters that was held at UN headquarters in New York in April 17 and April 19, and also at the regional headquarters in Geneva in October 18. He has been a member of International Association of Tax Judges and participated in various meetings at Helsinki and Cambridge. He has been invited to address Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Finance Bill 19 in Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, and his topic, his profile runs into pages. सर श्योर जब आप लोग सब सर को सुनेंगे तो उसका जो एक्सपीरियंस होगा वो इस प्रोफाइल से भी और कई गुना ज्यादा होगा. सो विद दिस ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन I hand over to you, sir. Thank you very much for being with us today on the Sunday morning.
Thank you, Vikas. I mean, for speaking many things to which I may not really deserve. But then anything good which is coming, I mean, is good. Very respected Shri Pramod Kumar ji, Honorable Vice President of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, with whom I have had the privilege of having been appointed into the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, which because of my family circumstances then prevailing, now I had to leave. I am very much thankful for Ahmedabad branch for asking me to be with all of you in such a national seminar or webinar programs, conference, in which the stalwarts like Shri Pramod Kumar ji, Shri TP Ostwal sir, Shri Rashmin Sanghvi sir, and Shri Soparkar sir, and many more, I mean, my memory fails me, has started failing me, I must candidly confess, because of the advancing of the age. But then giving me the last session, I think is an attempt on the lighter side to test the patience of all of you. And friends, courts are, because of this pandemic, functioning virtually. Our income tax appellate tribunal, I mean, with which I have had very intense association, because I have been appearing before this august institution right from my early days of the profession. Then for a brief period, I have had the privilege of joining. And I can say, I mean, this wonderful institution has withstood the test of time, and under the trying times are virtually holding the courts and delivering the judgments. Even for that matter, Honorable Supreme Court and Honorable High Courts are also hearing the tax matters, at least in Delhi, I can say, and I am seeing even Gujarat, for that matter, Calcutta. I mean, the courts are seized with the hearing virtually. And despite the impediments, the judgments on the taxation sides are coming. Earlier, the judgments used to be reported, then we used to read them with the citations, and then we used to argue. But then the way the information technology has taken over, and because of which there is a blast into this information. Now the judgments come the moment they are delivered by the courts, and we may not be in a position even to refer the journals, because it takes time for them to be printed. So friends, the topic which has been given to me today is to speak on the latest judicial decisions. But then before I come to the specifics of those judicial decisions, now couple of things I would like to share. So this income tax appellate tribunal, this wonderful institution, records the finding of facts which are taken by and large as the final fact finding or the final facts found by the tribunal. But then it is not as if the facts found by the tribunal are never disturbed the High Court. When either of the party aggrieved against those factual findings recorded by the tribunal, now are able to show to the High Court that those findings are perverse, then High Courts do tend to interfere even in the matter of facts also, because the courts have said that if there is a perversity which is crept into the recording of facts by the tribunal, then it gives rise to substantial question of law. Otherwise, the High Court can adjudicate only on those issues which involve the substantial question of law. So what is the meaning of perversity of facts? In simple words, if some relevant fact has not been considered by the tribunal, or some irrelevant fact has come to be considered by the tribunal, then the perversity creeps in. And that is how, and that is why the High Courts step into to correct that kind of perversity, and such perversity, I mean, gives rise to the substantial question of law. Now, against the orders passed by the High Court, now there is appeal by way of the special leave before the Supreme Court. Though there are two routes to approach the Supreme Court. One way to approach the Supreme Court against the judgment of the High Court is to seek certificate of fitness from that very bench. And when that very bench certifies that it is a fit case to be heard by Honorable Supreme Court, then the certificate of fitness then becomes the basis for Honorable High Court, Honorable Supreme Court to hear that appeal. And the second way to approach the Supreme Court is to seek the leave of the court. And wherever Honorable Supreme Court finds on the basis of hearings, I mean, which do take place on Monday or Fridays before the Supreme Court, that yes, in some question of larger public interest or some question on which there are divergent or conflicting judicial views coming from various High Court is involved, then Honorable Supreme Court now admits. Otherwise, then the special leave petition is liable to be dismissed. Now, when the special petition is dismissed simpliciter, then it cannot be said to be laying down the law, or the law which has been laid down by the High Court. That law is at that stage, but then it cannot be said that Honorable Supreme Court has laid down the law by dismissing the SLP. But then, if a SLP is dismissed by some speaking order, then there are Supreme Court's decisions itself which say that even if the special petition has been dismissed at the threshold, but then by passing a speaking order, though most of the times Honorable Supreme Court, doesn't give a reason while dismissing the special petition, but then wherever there are speaking orders passed, then also Honorable Supreme Court has said that then it will have the binding effect under Article 141 of the Constitution. Now, on the other hand, even if a special petition now having been converted into civil appeal and Supreme Court does not pass a speaking order, then also by virtue of the doctrine of merger, even if that decision of the Supreme Court in the matter or while disposing the civil appeal may not be speaking order, but then by virtue of the doctrine of merger, now the underlying decision of the High Court then gets approval from the Supreme Court, and the ratio decidendi of that decision then becomes the law, which has got the binding precedent under Article 141 of the Supreme Court. So now, with this brief background as to how the appeals are admitted before the High Court and before the Supreme Court, nowadays, our courts are full on account of writ petitions which are being filed by the whole hosts of SSCs who have been either assessed in a faceless manner under Section 144 capital B of the Income Tax Act, or in whose cases the notices under Section 148 for reopening the concluded assessments have been issued on or after 1st April 2021. And in Delhi High Court, I can say their lordships now have said on more than one occasion that what kind of a law has been passed under Section 144 capital B by the legislature, and that even the personal hearing now would have to be granted or has been contemplated to be granted on asking. And even on asking, it is not being given on facts on the ground level. And that is how the high courts are interfering in the writ jurisdictions directly against the assessment order. Now, earlier also, we used to file, depending upon the particular facts and circumstances, the writs against the assessment orders. But then nowadays, after the introduction of this new regime, the faceless assessments, the number of writs against the faceless assessment orders being passed now have multiplied, and there are several reasons for it. Either the draft assessment orders were not passed, or even if the draft assessment order has been passed, but then the show cause notice has not been given. Even if the show cause notice has been given, the time given has not been adequate, or the assessment order has been passed even before the expiry of the time given in the show cause notice. The SSC having asked for personal hearing now have not been granted. And so much so, the NFAC has not even bothered to respond to the requests made by the SSC for personal hearing. Now, all those grounds have compelled, and now the portal, which was not functioning, despite the closure of portal, the assessment orders have been passed. Though the CBDT gave a press release and the notification that the dates should be fixed on or after 10th of June 2021, and yet the dates were fixed between 7th to 10th of June, and then the assessment orders passed. And therefore, when the breach of principle of natural justice has been so rank evident, when the personal hearing has been thrown to the winds despite asking, or even without giving an opportunity to the SSC to ask for the personal hearing, because when there is a variation is proposed, the show cause notice is to be issued, and only then the right to seek personal hearing springs up. And then when these things were flouted in the assessment orders passed recently by the National Faceless Assessment Center, then obviously the SSEs, instead of opting for the routine appellate mechanism, chose to knock at the door of the High Court. And the High Court's finding merit on account of the violation of the principle of natural justice, lock, stock, and barrel, then have chosen to interfere and have given opportunity to the department while setting aside these orders that they may pick up the thread from the stage of the show cause, and then after seeking the reply and giving personal hearing in case it is so asked, to dispose of or to pass assessment order accordingly. So hardly is there any day, at least in Delhi High Court, because I do appear before the Lordship's Delhi High Court, I can say hardly is there any day when, I mean, at least a couple of writ petitions against the assessment orders passed under section 144B are not being taken up and disposed of. The other fiasco or the fox pass which has been committed by the legislature, that new reassessment provisions were brought on the statute on or from 1st April 2021, and time for issuing notices for assessment year 2013-14 and 2014-15, which were coming to an end on 31st March 2021, those were extended by 2 notifications till 30th June 2021. And therefore, the question arose in respect of those notices which have been issued on or after 1st April 2021, now whether the mandatory provisions of section 148 capital A ought to have been followed by the assessing officer before the issuance of notice under section 148. Now, under the taxation laws relaxations of the provisions amendment act 2020, now the limited power which was taken by the board under the provisions of that act was to extend the time limit for the issuance of notice. But while issuing the notifications of 31st March 2021 and thereafter 27th April 2021, the notification which has been issued seems to have exceeded the conferred power under that Amendment Act. And the board in that notification has taken upon itself the task of telling as to which law would apply. And that is why, and that is how it seems that the fox pass has been committed at that stage. Honorable Delhi High Court every day now is staying whole hosts. Initially their lordships are passing, I mean, individual orders, but now, I mean, since last week their lordships started passing the consolidated orders because the numbers of such petitions are aplenty, are in good numbers coming before Honorable High Court. But the Court of Honorable Chief Justice of Delhi High Court in one of the decision has even gone to the extent of staying the notifications itself. And I have been told that the CBDT or the Income Tax Department now has rushed to the Supreme Court against the decision of the Delhi High Court passed by Honorable Bench of Chief Justice, for the reason because if the notifications themselves are stayed, then several other actions, I mean, which were to be completed on the basis of those notifications, now it will be difficult for the departmental authorities to complete them. And therefore, now let us see, I mean, what happens. The name of that decision is e-Homes Infra. So, I mean, these are 2 types of cases which are coming in good numbers before Honorable High Courts. And you may be reading that Honorable Calcutta High Court, Honorable Rajasthan, Honorable Allahabad High Court, even Madras High Court, and wherever, I mean, these actions of the departmental authorities in issuing notices on or after 1st April 2021 under section 148 have been issued and are being challenged, the High Courts are showing their indulgence against the very assumption of jurisdiction under section 147. And even the plea raised by the revenue in the matter of those writs which were filed against the assessment orders, that these assessment orders can be appealed and there is alternate remedy. Even this kind of pleading, I mean, which is often raised by the revenue or by the other side, now has been repelled by Honorable High Court on the ground that this is a self-imposed obligation and therefore, cannot always bind the court from exercising its jurisdiction under Article 226 of the Constitution. And therefore, wherever the court find that there is a rank violation of the principle of natural justice, or some order has been passed which could not have been passed at all in the eyes of law, and then the High Court say that we cannot relegate an SSE, to the long drawn process of the appellate mechanism, and therefore, by exercising our exceptional extraordinary power conferred to us by the Constitution, we show our indulgence, and that is how the courts are showing indulgence. And in the case of Harbans Chawla and in the case of Renew Power, Honorable Delhi High Court have said that though they are conscious, the lordship said that though they are conscious that there is a impediment of alternative remedy, but then we are overcoming this impediment because according to us, the facts of those assessments do suggest, do warrant that we show our indulgence at this stage itself. The next contemporary issue which I'd like to take is the disalliances under section 3615A made by the assessing officer either in assessment or by the CPC by way of adjustments under section 143(1) because of the delayed payment of ESI and PF contributions of the employees. Now, if you remember, now this controversy now has been raging for quite some time, and it was raging in the context of the employers' contributions also. But then the Finance Act 2003 brought an amendment, and though prospectively that in case the employers' contributions come to be paid on or before the due date of filing of return, then that will be treated as the payment in time and the disallowance will not be made under section 43B. Now, even that amendment was also challenged because I myself was party before Honorable Supreme Court and before my Lord Justice Kapadia as he then was. This matter was heard in alum extuitions. Now, whether this amendment made in section 43B, that this amendment has to come into effect prospectively. Now, whether would come into effect prospectively or it can be given effect to retrospectively also. And Honorable Supreme Court in that alum extuitions decision had held that since this is the curative decisions, in order to prevent the mischief which was never intended, and therefore Honorable Supreme Court in the context of the employers' contributions happened to hold that even though the Parliament says that this amendment will come prospectively, but then it will be deemed to have come into effect right from the day when this employer contribution was added to section 43B. Now, in the light of these decisions, the issue was arising before the various courts now as to what would happen in case the employees' contributions now are not paid in time. I remember I had an occasion to argue this matter before Honorable High Court of Delhi in the case of Amil Limited before my Lord Justice Sikri as he then was. And going by the purport and object with which this section was brought, going by the scheme of the Provident Fund in which after receipt of some damages, the Provident Fund authorities, ESI authorities condone, this action of making this payment belatedly. And then after taking into account, this decision which was rendered in the case of the employer's contribution, the Delhi High Court took the view that the due date in case of employees' contributions now would also be treated to have been should be treated to be taken as that of the due date of filing of return. And since then, various high courts were deciding by taking one or the other line, but in favor of the taxpayer. Though a couple of decisions, Gujarat High Court probably did not agree on this. Gujarat High Court, went by the literal rule of construction of section 3615A to say whether the section says that these contributions of the employees have to be paid or have to be credited to the account of the employees strictly on or before the due dates as prescribed under those legislation. Therefore, the lordship said that they cannot read it otherwise. So there were judicial conflict on this issue. And therefore, depending upon in whose jurisdiction the SSEs were situated, the lower authorities were accepting or not accepting the claim of the SSE. Finance Act 2021 now brought one amendment, and with utmost respect, I would say that shows the obstinacy or the stubborn attitude or the persistence or the insistence of the legislature in the matter of the employees' contributions. And probably, that insistence was on this premise that when the employer collects from its employees their contributions, then this amount is held in trust. And therefore, if there is a delay, then the delay must prove to be expensive and costly to the taxpayer. And therefore, one explanation has been inserted by the Finance Act 2021 in section 3615A to say that for the removal of doubts, the due date under this section was never intended to be the due date, which is their due date for the employer's contribution. So now the final word, seems to have come from the legislature. But then this explanation has been inserted by the legislature with prospective date. But then since this explanation was worded in this manner for the removal of doubts, and therefore this kind of a phrase that this is being inserted for removal of doubts itself creates doubt. Now, at least whether it would be prospective or it can also be given to have the retrospective effect. So when we were grappling, this kind of a dilemma, Honorable Hyderabad bench in Crescent Roadways Private Limited, CRESENT, because these decisions are not reported. The Crescent Roadways Private Limited, ITA number 1952, Hyderabad 2018, dated 1st July 2021. Now, after taking into account this amendment made by the Finance Act 2020, this is important because other decisions are coming from honorable benches of the tribunal. But then this decision, I could lay my hands. There may be other also, but then I must candidly confess that I could lay my hands on this Hyderabad bench of decision, in which after taking into consideration the amendment of Finance Act 2021, Honorable Hyderabad bench of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal have held that this amendment, which has been so inserted by the Finance Act 2021, cannot be given a retrospective effect, and that principle of the Hayden's mischief rule cannot be pressed or cannot be applied here. So this decision is very important decision because I hope, but then you are covered by the Gujarat High Court, in Ahmedabad and the entire jurisdiction of Gujarat. So probably this decision may not help you, because you are governed by the mandate of the jurisdictional High Court within the state of Gujarat. The decision of the Gujarat High Court in the matter of ESI and PF employees' contribution has got the binding effect. But then for the rest of the country, wherever there is no jurisdictional contrary decision or adverse decision, now this decision of Hyderabad bench, despite Finance Act 2021 insertion, now can come very handy. But then the other issue, if at all, whether this kind of an adjustment can be made into the intimation under section 143(1), probably that was not dealt in this case. Now that has been dealt, I have been told today morning only by my associate Somil Agrawal, that Honorable Delhi bench of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, I am not aware of the decision, but then if you put the relevant words into Google, that you can come across the bench, as I have been told, presided, if not presided, then consisting of Honorable Shri Prashant Maharshi, again from your state only, a wonderful member in Delhi, have had an occasion even to hold this thing, that this kind of an adjustment cannot be made within the scope of section 143(1). Because if you see, many times I have seen CPCs making the adjustment on the ground that the tax auditors have so reported. But then if you read clause 20 of form 3CD in the tax audit report, now there the tax auditors are required to give information of the due date and the date of payment. Now the tax auditors are not computing the disallowance under any section, much less under section 3615A. So if the CPC has made adjustment on this premise, on this ground, that the tax auditors have given this information, then on that score, Honorable Delhi bench of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal in that decision has held that even under section 143(1), this adjustment could not be made on the ground that the tax auditors have so specified, because the tax auditors do not compute disallowance under section 3615A, though tax auditors are required to work out and compute disallowances for so many other things, like under section 40A3, 40AIA. I mean, there are several clauses, but in respect of many other clauses, the tax auditors are required only to give information, and accordingly, merely giving information is not equivalent to the suggestion or the reporting of making disallowance by the tax auditors. Then one more contemporary issue, I mean, which we all professionals are grappling with at various stages and at various forums, is about the additions made on account of the penny stocks. As all of us know, I mean, this word penny stock, though is not there under the Income Tax Act, but then has gained currency, and has gained currency to this extent that the entire stocks are to be classified even by any very in any simple manner, whether it is a penny stock is not penny stock, and the moment it is called a penny stock, then your entire factual background, factual basis, factual metrics, I mean, that is tended to take a backseat while appraising the evidences. So in respect of these stocks, I mean, which are given a very unique name of penny stocks, whenever substantial capital gain has been shown and has been claimed as exempt under section 10 clause 38 by the SSEs, now obviously the departmental officers, including the first appellate authority, now have not come very softly on such kind of gains earned by the SSEs and claimed to have been earned by the SSEs. But then before the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, when these evidences were appraised and appreciated, and I always tell that if there is a justice in this country by and large, then it is at the stage of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, and that I say with utmost pride. And I, having been associated with the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, I mean, for almost 30 years in all capacities. I mean, earlier I used to practice as a chartered accountant. I have been the member, and then I have been practicing before it as an advocate. Therefore, I can say that when the evidences were appraised objectively at that level of the tribunal, then Honorable Tribunal found that surmises and conjectures, howsoever grave, I mean, cannot partake the character of evidence, and therefore Honorable Tribunal, I mean, good number of decision, I mean, have decided this issue in favor of the taxpayer. Now, one more thing which I always say, and even at the cost of repetitions, I would say that whether a credit appearing in the books of account or whether a sum appearing to the credit of your passbook is genuine or not, it's not a question of law. It is a question of fact. And when something is a question of fact, and that question of fact has to be decided based upon the appraisement and appraisal of the evidences, now which are brought on record by you, or which are brought on record by the departmental authorities, or in the light of the absence of any evidence having been brought by the revenue authorities. Because this has been my experience, and so must be yours also, that these kind of cases, though the departmental officers' assessment orders or the appellate orders have said that these are the adverse evidences against the SSEs, there may be some SEBI report, there may be some claim of investigation report, there may be claim of some deponents having, I mean, deposed adversely against the taxpayer. But then, apart from making the bald assertion in respect of all these things, I mean, those evidences are not brought on record. And if at all the depositions are brought on record, and when the person who has been affected adversely asks the assessing officer to produce that person because that person happens to be his witness, because the deposition has been collected at the back of the SSE, and therefore he would like to cross-examine such witness, and such witness is not then produced by the assessing officer, then obviously his deposition is bound to be excluded from consideration. And if that deposition is excluded from the consideration, or some evidences which have been collected at the back of the SSE are not confronted to the SSE, then obviously those evidences are excluded, bound to be excluded from consideration. And then the net effect of the evidences which remain on the record is to be seen. Then in most of the cases, Honorable Tribunal found that it does not warrant addition. But then the things keep on flowing, and therefore some adverse decision came from Honorable Delhi High Court in the case of Udit Kalra and in case of Suman Poddar. But then in a subsequent decision of Krishna Devi, Honorable Delhi High Court, PCIT versus Krishna Devi, dated 15th of January 2021, Honorable Delhi High Court, my Lord Justice Narula, speaking for the court, now had held that even if 4,892 times, that share carried the value in the stock market, it was enough to have aroused a suspicion. But then that case cannot be decided simply on that basis. And those decisions which are usually pressed by the departmental authority, Durga Prasad Maurya and Sumati Dayal, though those decisions are there, but then those decisions, cannot overturn or overpower the hardcore evidences establishing the factum of purchase, establishing the factum of sales. Cannot overpower such kind of evidences. And therefore, in Krishna Devi's case, Honorable High Court of Delhi now have found that quoting of a price more than what a share can justify may be a factor which ought to have put the assessing officer on inquiry. But then, there being no other adverse evidence, now the issue cannot be decided against the taxpayer, more so in the teeth and in the face of the hardcore evidences which establish the factum of purchase and the factum of sale. And Honorable High Court has said that the credit which appears in the books of account of an assessee, now whether it is a question of fact or a question of law, then we would say this is a question of fact. Either some perversity into the factual finding recorded by the tribunal is brought to our notice. Till then, there can be no question of law which can be said to be arising. And that is what the import and the purport of this decision, which is on a very contemporary issue and which I thought that I must share, that decision. Then nowadays, you must have seen the flurry of notices under section 148 having been issued by the departmental authorities. And in most of the cases, where such kind of facts which I'm going to discuss were there, the department was not having information, and yet the notices were issued mechanically. Mechanically in the sense, the reasons must have been recorded. That is why I'm saying, mechanically in the sense the notices have been issued. Because those assessees on whom the notices were purported to have been served, were no more when the notices were issued and were sought to be served. And therefore, any assessment or reassessment order passed in the case of a deceased person, now whether can be said to be a valid assessment order. Now the department said, sir, how could we have known to it? And it was an equal bounden duty of the legal heirs to have apprised or to have brought it to the notice of the assessing officer. And therefore, if an assessment has been made in the name of a deceased, it should at best be taken as an irregularity, not an illegality. And the name of the decision is Savita Kapila, dated 15th of July 2020 from the Delhi High Court. And then Shripati Subbaraya Manohara, again the Delhi High Court, though the name appears to be of an assessee from the southern India, but then probably he may have been assessed in Delhi. That is why the writ petition was filed in Delhi High Court. And it's a very recent decision of 14th July 2021, in which my Lord Justice Manmohan, presiding the court, have held that assessment of the dead person is bad and illegal, and the legal heir is not obliged. This is very important. Legal heir is not obliged because there is no statutory mandate under the provisions of law, because a person is expected to do something for which there is a statutory edict and mandate. So there is no such statutory edict or mandate for the legal heir, to have brought this fact of the person deceased to the notice of the assessing officer. And therefore this assessment order which has been so passed on a dead person now is nothing but a nullity and it cannot be said to be irregularity. Then the department said that section 292 capital B is there under the Income Tax Act, which condones certain kinds of lapses on the part of the authorities in passing the orders and issuing the notices. Even that did not find favor with the court and said that if there is palpable lack of jurisdiction, that infirmity in the jurisdiction is not sought to be or cannot be allowed to be cured under section 292 capital B, if we go strictly by the language of section 292 capital B. And therefore, and one more thing, I mean, which was held by Honorable Delhi High Court in that decision, was that section 159, though says for making assessment of the legal heir, but then if you read section 159, now that comes into play only if the notice was served on the person when he was alive, and later on during the course of the proceedings when he became deceased. Then of course the assessing officer, I mean, was to frame assessment of the legal heir. Otherwise, I mean, 159 does not ask the legal heirs to bring it to the notice of the assessing officer, even if that person on whom the assessment order has been made or the notice has been issued under section 148 now has already been deceased. So this is the distinction which the lordships have made in Savita Kapila and the Sripati Subbaraya's case while analyzing section 159 as to where the liability or the obligation of the legal heirs would come. Now, associated with this kind of the judicial decisions, now recently some decisions have come, one from Madras High Court, other from Delhi High Court, in which the decision of Honorable Supreme Court in PCIT versus Maruti Suzuki India Limited. If you remember, in Maruti Suzuki India Limited 416 ITR 613, Honorable Supreme Court had already held that the assessment made in the name of the amalgamated company or the non-existing company, because after amalgamation, the amalgamated company is dissolved. And therefore, if the notice is issued to the amalgamated company or the assessment order is made in the name of the amalgamated company, now that assessment is a nullity. And this being the jurisdictional defect, as I discussed in the case of Savita Kapila, this being the jurisdictional defect, the section 292 capital B, I mean, does not come to the rescue to save this assessment. So Maruti Suzuki was clear, but then in Vedanta Limited, I mean, this is a very recent decision of the Madras High Court in Vedanta Limited versus DCIT, Chennai, Honorable Madras High Court, now have held, because I always say that each case is an authority on its own facts. And therefore, even the minor changes in the facts in a case, I mean, may bring sea change or the sea change of difference in the result and outcome. So Vedanta Limited probably was one of such case where there were slight difference in the facts. Because though 148 was issued in the name of a company which was already merged with another company, but that company, I mean, changed its name very frequently and merged, but then the PAN number remained the same, and therefore Honorable High Court, despite Maruti Suzuki, it's a decision of the Supreme Court, now took into account this change in the factual matrix which is there to say that bona fide errors, I mean, may happen, and therefore PAN has remained the same. This company has changed its name, and therefore taking a different interpretations than the one conveyed by Honorable Supreme Court in Maruti Suzuki on El Madras High Court, now have held that since section 170 is there, section 292B is there, section 170, I mean, says that in case the company is merged or is I mean, then the assessment has to be made. So section 170 and section 292B were pressed, though these sections were pressed in Maruti Suzuki also were considered. But then because of this factual matrix or change in the factual matrix, Honorable Madras High Court now have held that Maruti Suzuki's decision cannot be applied mechanically, and wherever there are bona fide errors which can be found, and those errors may have been committed by the assessing officer, but then the benefit will have to be given to the, and therefore Honorable High Court did not quash the notice under section 148 in that case. Similarly, the Delhi High Court, in a recent decision in Sony Mobile Communications India Private Limited, now there became the difference of opinion before honorable judges. Now whether Maruti Suzuki, should be applied or not. My Lord Justice Endla, who was presiding the court, now he again raised certain questions. He raised, though he did not agree, or I would not say that he did not agree, but then he distinguished the decision of Honorable Supreme Court in Maruti Suzuki. And he applied section 23 of the Companies Act, because at that time 1956 Companies Act was in force, and then section 170, and then the amalgamation, which is approved by the High Court, which says that amalgamating company now will be responsible and liable for all acts, deeds, responsibilities, liabilities of the amalgamated company. And therefore, my Lord Justice Endlaw, in his decision giving an adverse decision against the taxpayer, now have raised certain questions as to what would happen in case there is a refund due to such kind of an amalgamated company. So he said that nothing much of substance can be or should be read into such kind of things, that too in the face of section 23 of the Companies Act, section 170 and section 292B of the Income Tax Act. But then my Lord Justice Narula did not agree with his brother judge, and the matter has been referred to the larger bench. So whenever you are confronted with this kind of a situation, arguing the cases where the companies have amalgamated and the assessment orders have been passed in case of the amalgamated company instead of amalgamating company, then you have to take into account not only Maruti Suzuki mechanically, but then you have to see Vedanta, the Madras High Court, and the adverse observations or adverse conclusions of my Lord Justice Endlaw in case of Sony Mobile Communications India Private Limited. Yes, the next decision is regarding the condonation of delay. Though condonation of delay, whether should be made or not, is also essentially a question of fact. There cannot be any law. But then since, some decision which comes from Honorable Supreme Court, even on the question of fact, now is worth a discussion. Because wherever you will find, now the appeals, maybe with a special leave, now can be filed belatedly if there are good and sufficient reasons seeking for the condonation of delay. And the party who has delayed it now is bound to explain the delay, and delay has to be explained for each and every day of delay. That is what the law which is so settled. And obviously, what can be the good and sufficient reason would devolve only on the facts, and the facts are supposed to be within the special knowledge of the person committing the default, and therefore it is for him, or it will be for that party to come forward. Now in this case, especially petition now was filed with the delay, and the condonation petition, and I can say, because I have represented the state of UP and before Honorable Supreme Court as a special counsel, and I can say with whatever little authority at my command that if anything which is drafted in the most casual manner before the Supreme Court is the petitions seeking for condonation of delay. I do not know, even before the tribunal, when we have to seek condonation, now we have to make each and every fact, so vocal and focal, so that the bench may be impressed upon that there were good and sufficient reasons so as to compel them or to impel them, to implore them that the delay is condoned. But the casualness with which condonation petitions are filed before the Supreme Court, and this case which I am going to discuss, Union of India versus Vishnu Aroma Pouching Private Limited, was not an exception. And therefore that irked their lordships, and their lordships imposed fine of 25,000. And I felt that with so much computerizations having been achieved, and yet such a lethargy being exhibited by those who were responsible, for filing the special petition in time now cannot be condoned. And that is why Honorable Supreme Court imposed not only the cost of 25,000 rupees, I mean, which may not appear to be very substantial amount from the Supreme Court's, perspective, but then further order of the Supreme Court that it be recovered from those officers who were responsible for this delay. Now, that made very interesting reading and a very unique departure. So, condonation of I always say, whether it is a condonation seeking for anything before the first appellate authority or before any authority or under section 264 or before the income tax appellate tribunal or before the high court for that matter, now your condonation petition must be so explicit so as to give each and every factual reason, and that too with support. Mere mentioning the reason on facts may not be enough. That will be a bald assertion, and unless those bald assertions are supported with evidence, those evidences may not necessarily be the documentary evidence, because there may be certain situations for which there may not be any direct or documentary evidences, but then circumstantial evidences that must be brought on record. And after reading that condonation petition, a person of an ordinary prudence now should be in a position, and of course after perusing the evidences which have been enclosed or advanced along with your condonation petition, now if is in a position to say, yes, if these are the reasons, then of course the delay which has been occurred in this case is plausible. So I always say, I have seen even the adjournment petitions, I have seen the way they are drafted by all of us. My offices may not be an exception to it. But then we should always remember while filing any petitions before any forum that in case it is going to be rejected tomorrow, then I must be in a position based upon the pleadings raised in that petition to take it forward before the higher forum. And then how would I argue based upon that pleading? That approach should be there. So incidentally, I thought to share my experience on this. Yes. Now, a recent Delhi High Court decision which has come, that when the commuted value of lease rent for 90 years is paid in one go, now whether it can be claimed as revenue expenditure or the claim has to be deferred, and only the proportional claim referable to a particular year alone can be allowed. Now, the name of that case is Coforge Limited. Now, and particularly, these kind of commuted payment situations comes when the plots are allotted by the state industrial development corporations, and where the lease rent has to be paid over a period of 90 years or 99 years. And then there is a clause that in case you want to pay it, then the commuted value of this payment, in case you make upfront payment, is this much. And therefore, this issue always arises now whether it can be claimed in one go or not. No, I'm not on that aspect whether it is a capital or revenue. That also may be a point of dispute. But then here that point of dispute was not there. It was referable to this whether it can be allowed in this year or not. So Honorable Delhi High Court held that there is no such concept of the deferral revenue expenditure under the Income Tax Act. Either an expenditure is revenue expenditure or revenue is capital expenditure. And therefore, even if that lease rent, which is essentially a revenue nature, now the commuted value of 90 years is paid, then it is certainly a liability of the revenue expenditure, and that has been paid in this year, therefore it should be allowed in this year. So wherever you are having such kind of cases having the identical fact, then you can press this decision. Now, one very contemporary issue, which we all may be grappling at some stages, are the penalty notices. Penalties under section 271(1)(c) particularly. Now the penalty 271(1)(c), as all of us know, now have been replaced by section 270(A) from assessment year 2017-18. Now earlier 271(1)(c), now penalty under section 271(1)(c) envisages two situations: concealment of particulars of income or furnishing inaccurate particulars of income. And this issue has always been raging. Now whether these charges are mutually exclusive or are overlapping. I remember very old decision from your own High Court, Gujarat High Court, which I have I used very often in my early days of profession. 85 ITR 77. The name I have forgotten, but the citation I do remember. Uh, I do not remember that decision. But then one decision which I read, and the name of that decision was some Naveen, and 27. I remember the citation 27 ITD 411 from the Ahmedabad bench of the tribunal. And in that decision, a threadbare analysis was done on this point. Now, whether these charges are overlapping or are mutually exclusive. So, I remember in that Naveen's case, 27 ITD 411, Ahmedabad bench of the tribunal now held that they are mutually exclusive because one can withhold or one can furnish. Now, both cannot do simultaneously. Though the correctness of that kind of a reasoning, I mean, can always be called in question, because by withholding I may be furnishing inaccurate also. I mean, that can also be argued. But then this controversy, which was there right from 85 ITR 77, now has now grown into a full-blown controversy. And the occasion for that controversy in the recent time was as a result of the Karnataka High Court decision in Manjunatha's case. 365 ITR 565. Now, in that decision, now this was brought out that these two clauses are mutually exclusive, and if the notice of penalty does not strike off an applicable clause out of these two clauses, and penalty provisions being of quasi criminal character, and therefore a person has to be put on charge, a specific charge, precise charge, and therefore such notice being vague and illusory cannot be said to be conveying the charge in a precise manner in penalty proceedings, which are nothing but quasi criminal in character, and therefore the very initiation of penalty is bad. And that decision, though I would not say was upheld by Honorable Supreme Court, because Supreme Court dismissed the SLP in SSA Emerald. Karnataka High Court's decision again in SSA Emerald, which was challenged before Honorable Supreme Court by the department, but the special petition was dismissed. And therefore, we cannot say that the ratio of the SSA Emerald High Court has been approved by Supreme Court, because, as I said in the beginning, because this was specially petition dismissed at the threshold. It was not converted into civil appeal. But then various high courts have taken, Delhi High Court has taken in Sahara Financial, and recently Bombay High Court, Goa bench, full bench, I mean, consisting of more than 3 or more judges, now have again held that penalties for the concealment 271(1)(c), the notice now consists of both the charges which are unstruck or the inapplicable clause is unstruck, then that notice is bad and the person is not informed of the charge or the grounds on which the penalty proceeding has been initiated, and therefore the penalty order passed on the strength of such kind of vitiated notice or infirm notice or the vague notice cannot be said to be, I mean, a valid penalty order. So this decision coming from Bombay High Court, full bench, that too. Now the next decision, which is again and dealing with a contemporary issue of the demonetizations, as all of us must have experienced that the demonetizations or post demonetizations assessments, now huge additions have been made because of the cash deposited by various taxpayers in their bank account during the demonetization period. And in most of the cases, the explanations on facts were that this cash was out of the cash sales effected by the taxpayer on or before 8th of November 2016, and which came to be deposited in the bank, maybe in a staggered manner. So the question, one question, I mean, with which I may disagree, but then it came before Honorable Vizag Tribunal in the case of Assistant Commissioner of Income Tax versus Hira Panna Jewelers. Now, one ratio, which my many chartered accountant friends also say, but I always have a difference of opinion. And in this case also, Honorable Vizag Tribunal, or Vizag bench of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal has said that the very fact that the sale has already been offered as income, and therefore Section 68 has got no application, I mean, though, as a counsel, if I have to argue the matters before the tribunal, obviously I will press not only these decisions, but the other similarly placed decisions. But then if you ask me, the language of section 68, which has been worded in such wide spectrum, any sum found credited. Now it doesn't leave any scope for exclusion of any sum, maybe on account of something which has already been offered as income. Because even if it has been so offered as income, but then the assessing officer is entitled to examine it on the parameters of section 68 to see that really the nature of this income is only that which is being shown by you as such. There may well be, I mean, possibility that this cash deposit may have been offered by you as sale, but then may not be representing the sale proceeds, maybe your undisclosed income. Now, merely offering some income now should not, does not, ought not to preclude the assessing officer from examining it on the parameters of section 68. Because if the nature is changed, then there may be whole lots of consequences that will spring. The tax rate under 115 BB, then assessment under a particular head, the set off of losses, the carry. I mean, therefore, to brush aside this argument that merely because I've offered this amount as income in my books of account, therefore it should oust the jurisdiction of assessing officer from examining it on the parameters that touches to section 68. At least I, as an individual, have never been able to fathom and appreciate. Now that is a different matter. Now this decision is there. The other decisions are also there to this effect. If I have to argue my cases, obviously, I remember one day I was arguing one case before the Delhi benches of the tribunal, and one proposition which I was arguing was based on the decision of Kabul Chawla, the Delhi High Court, and that says that in case of a search, if an assessment has attained finality earlier, and if there is no incriminating material found as a result of search, then no addition can be made. Now, as an author, in our book published by Taxman, I and my partner Dr. Raj have taken a very conscious decision, even before the advent of Kabul Chawla, that once a search takes place, then the preceding 6 years assessments are open, and only restrictions which can be read, and that too in an implied manner, are those restrictions which can be there in case of a 147 reopened assessment. So when I was arguing based upon Kabul Chawla, then I do remember honorable member, now who was aware of our viewpoint as an author, he said, "Ki advocate Dr. Rakesh Gupta is arguing against the author Dr. Rakesh Gupta." So it so happens, anyway, yes. Now the setting up of the business, because once a business is set up or a business is commenced, now this has always engaged the attention of the courts. And this engagement of the attention of the court is for the purpose. And the purpose is that expenditure incurred during this period after the setting up and before the commencement, now whether can be claimed as a deduction. Now, this has always been a very contentious issue. Department says once you have commenced the business, only then we will allow you the expense. SSC's contentions remain that once I have set up, then any expenditure incurred after the setting up my business, I'm ready to do business if nobody turns up. I have set up my business. My shop is ready. If no customer comes and thereby then you say that I have not commenced my business, now that may not. And so this issue reached to Delhi High Court in Maruti Insurance Broking Private Limited and Honorable Delhi High Court. Now in this decision also said, and I tell you, if not apart from this decision, if you read section 3, now which speaks as to what will be the previous year in case of a business now which has been started during the year. Now it says the previous year will commence from the date of setting up of the business. So setting up of the business is important, and that is what Honorable Delhi High Court took into account the factual matrix and said that they were ready to commence business. Everything was in its place. Premises were taken on hire. Employees were also hired. Now, therefore, there is always hiatus. There is always a gap between the time a person or entity is ready to business and when the business is actually conducted. And during this period, interregnum period, the expenses are bound to be incurred. Therefore, if you are also engaged at some stage on this issue, then kindly, do remember this decision of Maruti Insurance Broking Private Limited, the Delhi High Court. Now, one decision from Jaipur bench of the tribunal. Again, I may not agree, with this kind of reasoning, and I'm quite conscious that this is not the solitary decision. There are other decisions also. And that decision is for this proposition that in case you ask for the reason and the reason is not supplied. Now, whether non-supply of the reason is fatal to the very sustenance of that assessment order or it is an irregularity. Now, of late, Honorable Tribunal, the benches of the tribunal have started taking this view that in case you asked for and yet reason was not supplied, the non-supply itself must strike at the root of the very sustainability of the reassessment order. So this Jaipur bench decision in Swami Keshwanand Shikshan Sansthan now is to that effect. But then a contrary view can be expressed, has been expressed, and earlier I remember when we used to challenge the 148 notice before the High Court on the ground, almost similar ground that we raised objection or the reasons have not been supplied. Then High Court used to give a direction by way of mandamus to the departmental authority to supply. They never quashed the assessment order, on that score. But I remember I had an occasion to argue one case before Honorable Delhi High Court, before my Lord Justice Muralidhar in Tupperware India Limited, and it is reported decision. There also, as a counsel, I argued that the objections filed by me were not disposed. And this non-disposal of the objections, now, because some high courts have taken this view that it is an irregularity and let the assessing officer dispose the objections. But then I remember Honorable High Court upheld this, that the assessment has to go because of this reason, that the mandatory conditions of the disposal, mandatory as a result of the Supreme Court decision in the case of GK and Drive Shaft 259 ITR 19, now having not been done, and therefore this assessment has to. So this line of thinking, because I always say that the law keeps on evolving and developing. It is a dynamic concept. Societal aspirations, now they also play a very important role when it comes to the interpretations. And therefore, there is a shift in the judicial approach in respect of such matters. Now, the low tax effect circular, as all of us know, now there is a low tax effect circular. And on the lighter side, we say that the government, by bringing such kind of low tax effect circulars, now have done, a great harm, at least to our purses, because when these cases are disposed of in that manner, then obviously, you cannot expect the clients to pay. But anyway, that is on the lighter side. So the question, we are discussing about the low tax effect circular. Then came another circular from the board that this low tax effect circular would not apply to certain situations or certain additions of a certain nature. And one of the additions of the nature which I do remember offhand is about the penny stocks additions. But then the question which arose now, whether in a case where the penalty under section 271(c) has been imposed in case of a penalty, in case of the penny stock additions, now whether the exception circular of that low tax effect circular would apply in case of the penalty appeal or not. So now this Honorable Mumbai bench of the tribunal in the case of Alu Wind Architectural Private Limited, and all these decisions are not reported decisions. Not reported means not reported in the journals. Had they not been reported, I also would not have picked them up. So I have picked them up from somewhere. So they are reported to that extent, but then there are no citations. The corresponding citations of the relevant journal is there. So in this case, Honorable Mumbai bench of the tribunal says that the exceptions to that low tax effect circular would not be applicable in case of the penalty appeals. So this aspect, is very important. Now I think though I have got now one decision I will be failing in my duty in case this is from Mumbai bench, and the author of this decision is none other than our Shri Honorable Pramod Kumarji, Maria Fernandez Cheryl versus ITO. Now these provisos which have been added to section 50C Now 50C having been brought on the statute from 1/4/2003, but then various exceptions have been carved out or some provisos have been provided at different point of time. And therefore the question comes, now these provisos relaxing the rigor of section 50C, now whether would come into effect prospectively or should be deemed to have come into effect right from the day when section 50C was there. So in this decision, and one more decision which he authored in Ahmedabad bench, and which we have taken into account in our book of real estate developer, and wonderfully written decision, and it has been brought out so nicely that when the amendments are curative in nature, in order to relax the rigor of a provision from the standpoint of the SSE, so even though the parliament may say that it will come into effect prospectively, but then it should be deemed to have come into effect retrospectively from the day when that provision itself has come into existence. So friends, now it is 1:15, and I think that today is Sunday, and I must give quietus to this deliberation, this stage. Thank you, Harit, thank you, Sunil, thank you everybody who has logged on, and thank you from the core of my heart.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji. And sir, if you have, let's see if the questions are there, 5-10 minutes.
Yes,
If you kindly permit, sir.
Why not?
I would request all the participants to send any questions in the chat box. And Jill, you may check the chat box and you may ask the question to the sir.
Sure, sir. I think so. At present, there are no such questions.
Yeah, but let's wait for 1-2 minutes for the.
Sir, I personally have a question. If
Yes,
there are questions. Chat box. Let me read. In case reassessment, this is from Pratik. In case reassessment notice is issued in the name of a dead person and client filed return in response to notice by the dead person. So, how can the client, because the client is dead person. So you mean to say the legal heir has filed the return because the client cannot file the return.
Yes.
And the science has not developed that much. So if the legal heir has filed the return, I mean, then, but then the notice issued in the name of the dead person itself is invalid, because the notice under section 148, the courts have said, is not an empty formal, it is a jurisdictional notice. So had it been some other notice, then probably by filing or by taking action, the legal heir probably would have taken upon itself the task of regularizing the thing. But in this case, since the very basis now is bad, and therefore the entire edificable building which will be constructed thereon, that also will be bad. Next, can you please share some insights on constitutional validity of notional rent under section 23(5) for real estate developers challenge before the Delhi High Court in the case? Yes, that case has been argued by me only. And I do not know whether you have asked it purposely from me, knowing that I have argued it. So since I myself am arguing this case on the constitutional parameter of the Delhi High Court.
Yes, sir.
And yes. I mean, that provision now which has been brought is rank unconstitutional. This I am not saying as a counsel alone, but I firmly believe in my individual capacity also. Sir, Sony Mobile Delhi High Court is referred to larger bench as order shows name of 2 judges as quorum. No, the reference, I mean, if you read the last pair of that decision, I mean, both the judges have said that what should we do? And therefore they have said, now in the tribunal, what happens if there are difference of opinion between 2 members, then the matter is posted or matter is put up before Honorable President to make a reference to the 3rd member. Now, before the High Court, whenever there are, though the occasions of difference of opinion in high courts are, I mean, not substantial, but then wherever such differences do happen, then the matter is put up before Honorable Chief Justice, and that is what the last para of this decision also says, that this file may please be put up before Honorable Chief Justice for his order, and then it is referred to the larger bench, and 3 judges or 3 or more judges would sit over it. The next issue which is there, or next question which is there, whether Supreme, again from Pratik. Oh, Pratik has hijacked this chat, I think. All 4 questions are from him. Is there not Monopolistic Restricted Practices Act?
Pratik Vora.
Okay. Whether Supreme Court suo moto SLP in cognizance of COVID impact, whereby limitation period extended for quasi-judicial proceedings, including initiation thereof, would come to rescue validity of reassessment notice issued after 1st April 2021 as reassessment. No. That may relax the rigor insofar as the time limit is concerned. Now, Supreme Court's decision relaxing the time limit has not said that even this law would not apply. So, therefore, the decision of the Supreme Court, I mean, in the context of extending the time limit of COVID-19, will have to be seen in the perspective. And therefore, I mean, it cannot be said the Supreme Court said that the law which ought to be applied on the issuance of a notice, that will also not apply and to that extent. But anyway, I mean, it's a very good point you have raised, Prateek.
Jill, you may ask the question you were asking, Jill.
It was, sir, the first question which Mr. Rakesh, he started with 148 and 148 new provisions. So I just wanted to know whether, what your views on both the sections of 148?
Both sections, the earlier section and new section?
And the new section, yes, sir.
I mean, that will be very lengthy discussion. If you have not heard me, there are many my YouTube's webinars on this topic. You may log on to our RRA legal YouTube channel that you can find, because
Okay.
that itself is a very, very long drawn. What is good? I mean, something was good in the past, something is good now, something was bad there, something is bad here. But one thing I can say, that 148A, kind of a ghost which the legislature has created, now that will prove the last nail in the coffin of the very reopening of the assessment, because too many mandatory conditions to be done by assessing officer, that too after obtaining the prior approval of the specified authority, to approach every time to him 3 times in 148A and 1 for 148, so 4 times, and then the kind of approvals the specified authorities are known for giving in the past, we all know, right from Chugamal Rajpal 79 ITR, and then 391 ITR at page 19, that case which was argued by me with the Delhi High Court before my Lord Justice, but as he then was. So, rather I would say section 148A section may prove to be a self goal. So, but then there are several other points. Only yesterday I speak in Calcutta. I mean, the CBT ex-member was there, Mr. Dash, one Mr. Retired IRS was there, Mr. Vasudevan. So even that will also come on the YouTube. So kindly, Zed.
Yes.
It seems there are no other query.
Very good.
But
Sunil
hands
sir.
have been raised by Vikas Jain ji, Ashok Sharma ji. Kindly unmute them.
Sunil sir, some of the participants have raised their hands. So if we can ask them to unmute.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
If they themselves can unmute, it's all right. Okay, Vikas Jain ji.
Jill, please unmute them.
Yeah, I have unmute Vikas sir and even Ashok sir also.
Ashok sir, बोलिए.
Yes, sir. Excellent session, sir. Sir, this 50C
सर
Ahmedabad.
पहले सर तारीफ करने से पहले आप ये बताएं तो सही, कहाँ के हैं आप? अहमदाबाद से हैं? कहाँ?
I'm from Mumbai, sir. I'm from Mumbai.
You're from
I
Mumbai,
heard-
sir.
Yeah, I have heard you in Birla Matoshi many times.
Oh, you were there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, this Ahmedabad being 50C judgment, you said excellent judgment by Mr. Pramod Kumar.
Yes.
What is the name and citation, sir?
Sir, I can give you the citation. The book, my book is there on the table, but then I'll have to find out that he wrote as an SMC.
Okay.
And yes, you do Google. Otherwise, we have captured it in our this book published by Taxman on Real Estate Development Joint Development Agreements.
Or can you have your number so I can
My number is 98104
98104
20515.
20515.
So kindly send me one WhatsApp, then I'll send you back.
Yeah. And secondly, sir, this 50C ratio, that it can also apply to 56 to 10 also.
That depends upon, I mean, let me know what proposition.
No, see,
what is
that
the factor?
stamp duty valuation is a general guideline and it is not mandatory. And this merely because there is a difference in stamp duty valuation, the addition cannot be made.
No. That would mean that we are stretching that ratio too far. Now, if the legislature itself says that if a person is in receipt of an immovable property, and either the value of, without consideration, the value of which is more than 50,000 rupees, or the difference between the stamp duty value and the consideration paid, I mean, is more than 50,000 rupees. So the stamp duty value, I mean, has always been there. If it is not there, then obviously the comparison cannot be made, and then you will automatically be out from 56 to 10.
Yes, sir.
So now let us.
Yes, let's sum up now.
Yes.
I would request Homesh to give vote of thanks. I think everybody is hungry also.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Sir, it is my privilege to deliver sincere vote of thanks to such an esteemed faculty, Dr. Rakesh Gupta, sir. Sir, on behalf of the Ahmedabad branch of ICI, I would like to sincerely thank for sparing your valuable time and enlighten us with the great learning on recent judgments of income tax. And I am sure, sir, that it helped every one of us and will surely assist us in our day-to-day income tax appeal practice. I am blessed, sir, to hear you, and we will be waiting to welcome you at Ahmedabad once the situation gets normalized. So we will again hear you physically as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and moreover, I would like to thank each and every participant that from like 10 o'clock Sunday morning that they have spared their valuable time. And with this, we are finishing our this national conference. So
Okay,
Sunil sir, if any point if you want to add.
No,
At the
but thank
conclu-
you very much. Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji, sir, and thank you very much to all the participants for attending 3 days national conference. I hope you must have got the benefit out of that, and we would have certain sessions in the future. We are planning, as the important judgment was taken by Rakesh Gupta ji, I would just add that we are planning the judgment series only. Very soon we are going to announce that, and Saturday, Sunday, 2 days in a week, and we'll be having around 7 to 8 sessions of that, different heads covering and the landmark judgments. And I would request Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji also that we would require your.
I tell you on the lighter note.
Yes, sir.
When today I was reading these decisions, my wife, who is a member Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, she was sitting before me. Now she was saying, now this much of consumption of knowledge by chartered accountants, now it is going to pose problem to us who hear appeals.
No, sir. नहीं सर, हमारी लिमिट है सर, हम एक से आगे फिर वहां नहीं जा सकते. नहीं सर. और बस
it was a wonderful session, sir.
It was wonderful. धन्यवाद सर, खूब धन्यवाद. और सर,
Thank you so much, sir.
And thank you all the participants.
Thank
and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the Sunday. Bye.